And I do think Tank is going to get put into a lot of trouble as far as getting outpointed because of Frank's speed and footwork. A lot of the proclivities and patterns that are consistent, repeatable, that are eventually going to set him up for failure. Welcome to the lab. Let's talk science. We have a fight simulation today. And then at the end, I give an explanation of why I see things the way I do. Now hit the like button. Now tell me specifically how you think this fight is going to end in the comment section. Let's get into it. Round one starts off Frank trying to establish a good jab, working defensively behind a mix of somewhat high guard and somewhat of a shell. And Tank is putting on subtle pressure and feinting, getting some reactions out of Frank. And I can see Frank, and I expect Frank to win those first couple of rounds just on activity, the speed of his entry and the speed of his feet in particular, just surprising Tank early on and allowing him to get in and out and score. And as the fight progresses, Tank starts to get a little bit more aggressive with his feet in those first couple rounds because he's trying to read for counters. He's trying to find counters to the jab, so he's trying to bring out reactions from Frank. And the reactions aren't very consistent early on, and then we build on that in the third and fourth round because Tank is still trying to find the timing, but Frank is fast. But despite Frank being fast, Frank falls in a couple of times. That makes it a mid-range or inside fight, and that's where Tank starts working, particularly working to the body with uppercuts and hooks, and then bringing that uppercut up every now and then, surprising them with a hook every now and then, but primarily focusing on the body and then bringing some surprising shots up. And then those early rounds, third, fourth rounds, you see Frank get a little bit more reluctant, a little bit more gun shy because he felt the power, he felt the body shots, and now he's a little bit more hesitant. That volume is going to start going down. It's going to start lower. It's going to start too lower as the fight progresses, and Tank is going to get a little bit more aggressive when we get into those fifth and sixth rounds. Now what you have is Tank starting to get better at timing the entries, timing body and getting body shots, even from range, stabbing to the body with the jab and him working with his own jab. So Tank is starting to look better and starting to even secure some rounds, whereas that third and fourth might have been a lot closer with even Frank winning the third and fourth in addition to like the first few. But the problem is Frank is falling in a few too many times, and it's making it into a mid-range fight a lot of times where Tank is starting to time those entries. He's starting to get a lot of work in with his combos. Tank is starting to roll out of his Philly shell, catching counter out of the high guard, everything like that. And yeah, Frank is running into some issues. In round 7 and 8, Frank is starting to slow down. Not a massive amount, but enough to make a difference. And that difference is now he's not moving as much. Now Tank is hunting him down. Now Tank is closing the distance, and now Tank is in his bag. He's catching and countering, rolling off the guard, rolling out of the shell, hitting counter uppercuts and left hands, right hooks, digging into the body. Just his timing is massively improved from those first few rounds. And eventually he finds that shot, probably around 8, maybe 9. Now, what will that shot be? What is Tank going to land? I think there's 3 major probabilities and then a couple minor ones, but I'll focus on the major probabilities. I think the biggest shot he'll land should be probably a counter to Frank's entry, probably a counter to the double jab of Frank, because Frank likes entering behind a lot of jabs. Maybe be a double, triple, whatever it is, it's going to come behind that jab. And I think that's going to be the key for Tank, is countering those jabs. And I think if he counters the entry, it's going to be a big deal because the momentum of Frank is going to be added to whatever shot Tank throws. It could be an uppercut underneath, it could be a left overhand over top. And he's going to see the feet, and he's going to make the read as Frank is closing the distance, and it's going to hurt very bad if it lands. A secondary probable shot that could put Frank down is a left to the body, possibly a right, but probably a left, especially if like Tank comes around at that angle and gets around that back elbow, and especially if Frank is fighting out of a high guard. If Frank is in front of Tank a little bit too much and he is fighting out of the high guard, like I said, Tank might break his stance, get a little bit around that angle and get underneath. Oh, he could get underneath a jab too, or get underneath one of those hooks, and then that hook connects to that third probable way that Tank could finish this. Frank is going to be in an exchange with Tank, and he's going to be throwing too many wide punches, especially if we're at mid-range, so it's a little bit further apart, not necessarily on the inside, but he's throwing those hooks from mid-range and they're looping and they're wide, and Tank is going to get underneath one of them and he's going to land like a big overhand, or possibly pull out of the way, throw a cross, or get underneath one of them, land the uppercut. Those are the three most probable ways I see Tank landing a shot that puts Frank away. And I say 85% chance Tank wins this, 15% chance Frank wins this. I'm usually kind of like, I'm nice with the percentages. I try and be a little bit nice with the percentages. Now, why did I choose that particular flow of the fight? Well, the double jab, which was the first thing I mentioned, as far as like probability. Frank sends out a lot of jabs to kind of like probe and guide the way for his entries a lot of times. And there are a lot of potential counters that can come over top or underneath that, depending on how Tank wants to approach that. Tank is eventually going to find something in an exchange or as a counter. And I do think Tank is going to get put into a lot of trouble as far as getting outpointed because of Frank's speed and footwork. Frank is going to be one of the more athletic people Tank has faced when it comes to full body athleticism, the feet and the hands and the head, just everything. Tank is all around, not Tank, well, Tank too, but Frank is a great athlete, and I think that speed and just his tight defense is going to pose a problem. Tank is going to have to break that shell. The problem is Tank is fine getting touched up. Tank is fine losing rounds because he knows he'll find that eventual shot, and that's what he's going to be focused on. Now, he could just approach this fight as a bully and just want to beat him up, and I do think as the fight progresses, that's what it's going to turn into. But early on, it's going to be way more slow paced, and Tank is going to like not be gunshot, but hold back as he's trying to make reads. He's focused on making reads, and that means he's going to be getting touched up and getting outscored because he's confident in his ability to close out the fight eventually. Now, Frank has the abilities to cause Tank a lot of trouble, but then at the same time, he has a lot of the proclivities and patterns that are consistent, repeatable, that are eventually going to set him up for failure. So he has a lot of things that are going to give Tank trouble, but he also has a lot of things that are eventually going to give himself trouble, just because we all know what to expect from Frank. Like we know how he fights. We know what he's going to do. He has like a set style and patterns. And so Tank absolutely knows what to expect if we know what to expect. And that's why Tank is eventually going to find what he needs. But yeah, that's all for the fight simulation. Get down in the comment section, tell me your thoughts. Immortality Serum out.